We have round three of Ding versus Gukesh 2024 FIDE World Championship. This was a really interesting one because it involved a trapped bishop, kind of like Fischer Spassky, in a different way, but it did involve a trapped bishop where Ding voluntarily trapped his bishop on c2. Really fascinating though, because it was kind of quasi-trapped, you'll see. Okay, so we have d4, d5. We have a d4, d5 opening, transposing, Queen's Gambit. So we have Queen's Gambit declined, and then a capture variation. It's a symmetrical variation, but just, trade exchange variation. Knight c3, c6. It's kind of a Slav setup. Queen c2, useful waiting move. There is not really a big rush for white to castle, interestingly, because of the center. When you play e3, you can keep your king in the center for a while. Black, not as much, a little harder. You can, but white can more easily delay because the e-file is shut down for it. g6. Seems that the queen also is stopping bishop f5. Now he really wants to get in bishop f5, so he goes g6, h3, bishop f5, and you can see he's already anticipating it with h3 to kick the bishop on the next move. Okay, attacks the b pawn. We have the common face-off between the queens, inviting the trade, of course. Black wants that. Takes b6. Half open file that comes up so much. Came up in my lesson this morning. You'll see it all the time. And yeah, he does end up taking the queen on b3. Ding takes, leading to double isolated pawns. Not super accessible because they're not on a half open file, but Ding tries to attack them anyway. Bishop c2, attacking b3. Bishop f4. So now interestingly, he's hanging the pawn, but it's kind of de facto defended. Well, it's counterattack, so it'll allow white to get a pawn back. Do you guys see that? A little tactic here. So for example, if he were to take, what would white do to get the pawn back?
He would take the knight with his bishop, and after rook recaptures on b8, the white rook takes on a7.
Exactly, Malcolm. Take here, and now it's all about positional evaluation. Not too bad for white, right? The main benefit for white is what?
Um, the rook on the seventh rank.
Yeah, you get black has a nice bishop pair. I mean, that bishop might get a little awkward on b3, actually, similar to the game. I don't think he's not going to get trapped, probably, but he can always come back. A little awkward, maybe. The rook's being annoying for black on a7. And yeah, there is the bishop pair, though. But is it going to be highly effective? We'd have to see. So that's fine to do. He was fine with that. And Ding did not want to go into it, so he strikes back with h5. Computer says about even. But we'll see again that Gukesh just goes all out. He's arguably overextending himself, like when he lost in game one. Not too afraid of pawn advances and potential weaknesses that you get with g4, right? Square, like if you move the e pawn, a lot of weaknesses on both sides. Doubled isolated pawns, I mean, that's a weakness. Ding is trying to exploit that. Gukesh is definitely opening himself up because he's just, it's a risk reward, right? He's taking bigger risks to get the wins. But and this is interesting because you're going to have more decisive games that way. So h5 is played very common whenever your opponent plays g4, or either way, like, or b5, b4 type stuff. Like in the Roy Lopez, when black moves the pawn, then white strikes at it with the a pawn. Have you guys ever seen that? Open up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see that a lot. There's really nothing to lose by playing h5 because if he takes, you can probably take with the knight. It looks kind of weird, right? You could take with the rook. It looks a little weird, but you get a tempo on the bishop. Actually, you might be able to land the knight on f4 with the assistance of your bishop later. You get a tempo, but h3 is really weak. So there's no point in taking it. Now, if you push it, well, now f5 is weaker. So he's got to give something up by pushing those pawns, leave weakness in their way. And again, this is not, well, this gives white access to g5, but it is an immediate attack on the g pawn, just threatening to win the pawn. You can't even take back because the pin. So that's a move you need to respond to. Moves the rook to g1, but now he's actually ceding the h file to Ding. Now I'm looking at it from black's perspective. I want to see, because Ding is kind of the one that makes some important decisions. So even though he lost, I want us to look at this critical decision that he makes. Knight bd7, knight d2. Now that's a funny looking move. in a way. But this is all revolving around that bishop. That's really the thing to focus on this game. I want us to really understand that. So rook g8 is indirectly stopping white from trapping the bishop on c2. He's not going to get the b3 pawn anytime soon. It's more of like a stifling effect, kind of locking in white's pieces. So of course white wants to play f3 and just even attack it now. And then when it runs to e4, f3. So that's why he really wanted to cement the pawn. He's moving away from the g file, white is, to guard the g4 pawn, stopping bishop f5. So that's where rook g8, kind of x-raying, the rooks are x-raying each other. So they both have some action on the g file here. And that allows black, no matter what, in this moment, no matter what, black can escape right now. So for example, he went, g5 was played. If rook c1 is played, well, it seems the bishop's going to get trapped. Do you guys see, hypothetically, I'll just make the move. Hypothetically, if this were played, how would black escape with the bishop? Again, kind of like how white escaped via counterattack. Now black escapes via counterattack. What is that?
I think it's g5 attacking the bishop.
Yeah, you counter with g5. So it's like you take me, I take you.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is too, if the bishop does a desperado, well, it doesn't matter because, well, I guess you could do a count. Maybe no, that doesn't work because then he takes here. If you take, but what you do is you just take, and then g4 is hanging. So like, okay, you get me, I get you. Trade, and it's 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, and if nothing else, black has a cleaner pawn structure. The double pawns are not terrible, but they are. I'd rather usually have them, connected like a pawn on this kind of thing. They are isolated, but again, it's worse if there's not a b pawn there for black. So black could just attack them on the half open file, but there's still an issue. I mean, the game revolved around that. And also you have stuff like bishop b4. The bishop just hang on a b4 because there's no a3, things like that. So yeah, you could double them. Again, in other words, we'd rather have the black side with queen takes b6, a takes b6, which is what white didn't do for that reason, right? As you can see though, no big deal. So it's like indirectly defended. In other words, it's defended via counterattack on the next move. Well, now instead of playing rook c1 and allowing g5, Gukesh doesn't like it. He sees it, so he plays g5, allowing the tempo on the bishop. It's kind of awkward too here because the rook's going to come back, right? So as you can see, a little overextended for Gukesh in terms of pawns. Overextension for black would be in the form of a piece, the bishop sticking its neck out too much or stepping forward, lurching forward a bit too much, right? So the bishop can retreat. Now this is where we get into it. Of the human move, the regular human move. First time I looked at it, I said, oh yeah, no big deal. Bishop can retreat. So after this, deals with the bishop. Actually, he doesn't yet. He plays f3. So trying to trap it. Well, the bishop's not an issue till the knight moves. So you can't really do anything to it. But the x-ray is still there. Now f3 working against the bishop. So again, there is the retreat to f5. Knight g7's played. There's the tempo on the bishop. Bishop reacts. Now this was an inaccuracy. Not because he didn't bring his bishop back. Computer just says bishop e7, tempo on g5. You just don't really need it, I think. Rook h5. So it would have been a slightly better version, not going here. But at any rate, the bishop is kind of indirectly trapped. So again, a lot of times, this is very interesting. We're seeing defense via counterattack in this game. So we're not really guarding stuff. We're just counterattacking. It's pretty cool. It's the theme of the game. There's that theme and the trapped bishop theme and the weakened pawns theme. It's the 3 main themes so far. And also kings hanging out in the center, right? We're in a queenless middle game. But either way, I think white's king did not intend to castle anytime soon. So rook h5, right? Now we have e4. So again, that's where black could have gone back. And that's like an equal game, e4, bishop back. Computer says equal, if I recall. Yeah, it's minus 0.1 or minus 0.3 if king f2. Minus 0.1 if pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Says knight b5. Interesting. Rook c8. What's the line? You can go behind and pin it and stuff. Interesting. Could come in here as well. So black has a lot of dynamics. Let's say he takes with the rook. Yeah, I think black has good dynamic play here. That's why and that bishop's pretty bad. Our bishop's bad too, though. But I do think we have a lot of activity here. So that's where the computer is seeing a good amount of compensation for sure. I mean, look at that. A lot of activity. Right. And he could even take that. That's crazy. And it prefers black though. Let's see what would happen. Just curious. Let's see what happened. Challenge it. Yeah, why not? Let's come in. It's giving white a plus a black a +1 here. -1, equivalent to black having a point up. You come back. Okay, what's going to happen here? You can't keep going back and forth if he wants to win. Escape with the rook. Yeah, I think it's just black has enormous activity, pressure across the board. And we're definitely seeing that the black king has the better of it. There's not really much that can come after him. The check doesn't do anything. This bishop can't do anything. Both bishops are congested. One of our bishops is awesome. Our rooks are awesome. Our knight's awesome. These guys are kind of hanging back, but they can activate. So we pile it up and we certainly have more than enough compensation for a pawn. Oh, and by the way, those pawns are, again, the doubled pawns, they do less in terms of making you have passed pawns. What if you were here? That would be dangerous. Two connected passed pawns next to each other. So anyway, that's interesting how that could have gone. Rook h5, if he had simply gone back, but he's going in for it. So Ding is allowing the bishop to get trapped. And that's the thing. It's not like the Bobby Fischer game, Fischer Spassky round one, where Fischer just made a blunder and the bishop just took the H pawn. Bishop takes H2, G3, and it was just stuck. In this case, it's on C2. Obviously, he knows E4 is coming. F3 just is telegraphing that. And E4. He's a super GM. He knows that, right? But the thing is, it's actually not that bad. Computer is giving white, that's the thing. It's giving white a +0.5. So it's slightly better for white, but he's not just like outright winning a piece and just winning. But like I said, if he had done the other move order, bishop E7, and now E4, now it's actually, well, you get to pick up the pawn. Okay, let's say bishop F2 to guard it. Now it's just saying retreat. It's still, but even let's say you allow E4. It's just, we'd have to look into it, but apparently it's a better version for black. But in both cases, you can get away with getting your bishop trapped. It's just a better version. Yeah, but he's not fully a computer. He's kind of a cyborg, not fully a computer. But we're going to look into that in terms of computer lines. So in order to trap your bishop on C2, though, you do need to be pretty accurate. Because again, if you get this wrong, if you get one move in the sweep sequence wrong, you're just going to be losing. So right now it's +0.7. So white's a little better, it says. Black has compensation. It's going to get like 2 pawns for a piece. That's the thing. With a lot of activity. But again, you have to play it just right to make it work. So first of all, I could have had a better version of bishop E7, little inaccuracy. Now after E4, this is very important. Okay, this is the moment that I want us to look at. And again, to see everything is really tricky. I'll play through some of it. I'll give you guys a moment to analyze it. But really the question here is, should black take the pawn? Probably pawn takes back to keep the bishop stuck. Or should black bring the knight immediately to E6? Now, if he takes the pawn, he's going to play knight E6 on the next move. So as you can see, what is the knight going to do on E6, of course? Well, there are two things. What's the main thing it wants to do pertaining to the bishop on C2?
Probably take on D4 to protect.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, well, in that case, it is directly defending the bishop, but indirect in the sense that, again, it looks like an amateur blunder. Okay, you take it, like I just go bishop F2 or not, trade it off. Your bishop's still trapped, right? So it looks like it's like a blitz game. We're like, oh no, that didn't work out. But again, in order to go into this, you have to play a computer. Computer only gives +0.5 for white. So in other words, it's totally playable for black. Likes white a tad, but black has, if black is down a piece, they have a lot of compensation for the piece. So, but here's the thing. He played pawn takes pawn. So knight E6 was the better move. That would have really justified the line. It's so hard to see why, though. You have to really break it down. We can actually get a sense in terms of evaluation of what this center looks like. But think about that. Let's break that down. I'll pause it here. So if you're watching, you think about it, and we'll discuss a little bit. I'm going to pause the recording.
Bishop F,
What are you seeing there?
Bishop F2.
Yes, there are two main moves for white to deal with the knight. Again, very direct.
That one
You got to
and
attack the knight.
yeah.
How else can black deal with the knight? I'm sorry, white deal with the knight.
I was thinking knight E2 as well.
Yeah, those are the only two ways to attack. Well, here's the thing. If you don't go right after the knight, He might be able to escape. Even so, I mean, you can still attack it on the next move. But, you know, or maybe they can take F3 and get out or something sometimes. But he's probably going to just take it. This is also, again, that's why bishop e7, as you can see, is preferable, because you would have some pin stuff going on and, you know, more stuff going on with b3. So it would have been slightly better. Anyway, as you can see, white's going to go after the knight. So bishop f2, let's look at that move first. And like I said, it gets pretty deep here. So I'll play out some of the moves. Now, interestingly, the way to guard the knight is bishop c5. Because now when the bishop takes, what's the benefit? Bishop takes back. Let me double check. I think I recall it, but okay, I won't look at the computer yet. But if bishop takes back, the benefit, of course, is the bishop on d4 is doing what?
Oh, it's attacking the rook.
Right. So you get a tempo. Now that doesn't mean that the bishop's not trapped, but then you get all sorts of crazy compensation. It just gets insane. Okay, look, so it's like, let me, I'm gonna pull it up just to double check. Yeah, it's saying white again. It's only giving white like a plus 0.6. So in other words, if you're like around half a point, like it's totally playable for black. It's totally fine. So takes, rook g2. Now it's saying
Now
so,
black just take his rook down to h1.
well, that's just outright hanging on c2.
Yes.
So he wants to do something, although interestingly, yeah, apparently he could even hang his bishop on d3. It's crazy, right? And
Yeah.
then if the bishop takes, you get a tempo on the bishop,
Yeah.
and then you do your move. It's just a different move order, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then, well, here's the line it's giving. It's like, open it up. And this is the same theme that we're going to see. There's just going to be a lot of piece activity, you know? But anyway, how about this? But anyway, let's go back to that main thing. But even here, he's down a piece for what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A piece for a pawn currently. Maybe he'll get another pawn. We'll see. Piece for a pawn, and it's barely giving white anything. Because the activity, the king placement. Well, there's that fork, there's this. But anyway, the main thing let's look at is this one takes here, b takes back. Let's see, takes. They trade a bunch of stuff. So the idea is, look, I mean, we have 5 for 3. So yeah, it's only 2 pawns for a piece. But just look at the positioning. So Malcolm, we're just looking at some trades that might occur. And he's still down a piece for 2, so down a point. Again, computer says almost even. So a5, king d2, a4. So just tons of activity. Let's say here, just keep on probing the position. But white, I call it junkyard of pawns. It's just a junkyard pawn. First they were double isolated, but they're just all over the place. And look at black's nice and tight. You know, they were together. May choose to push it. But black has good coordination. Knight hops, rook invasions, passed pawn, fixed right here. And so the rook has to kind of babysit the G pawn. You go away, rook can just come take it. That's hanging. So as you can see, there are a lot of problems here. And so probably you'll end up, yeah, there's like a line where white ends up losing another pawn. You can trade rooks, it doesn't matter. Well, now it's 3 pawns for a piece. That's, I mean, technically equal material. Again, great positioning for black. So you can see it's kind of intuitive also. You have to see some of the tactics, of course. You have to see them all. But you don't have to see like 10 moves deep because it's kind of intuitive. It's like, okay, I might be down a piece for 2 pawns, but I have such good positioning. So let's look at some other ideas. So there's bishop f2, bishop c5. There could also be knight e2 at this point. So this is one of the key ideas here. You take on f3 with check. So again, you're demolishing pawns as you go. And now I want you guys to compare this. We'll look at one other move. I want you guys to now compare this to the pawn takes pawn line. And I think you're beginning to see that when the pawn takes back, then the knight e6 stuff. Now we have knight takes f3 check, takes. Which way should we go? I want to preserve. I'd rather preserve the bishop, right? Say he goes there, for example. No, okay, I'm just gonna make a logical move. Let's go here. Like bishop takes. You don't get taken by the knight. Again, look at this positioning. Computer, look, eval, dead even. It's giving dead even. It's giving white nothing here. Maybe, yeah, why not activate the second rook? So you could bring in the knight too. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So here we go. We have 3 pawns, not only 3 pawns for a piece though. Let's evaluate again. This comes up different kind of iterations of this, but this is the general idea that we're going to get something like this. Let's break this down, kind of like we'll do sometimes, where I'll have a lot of sidelines over there, right? But I'm going to go ahead and just fill it, fill this in so we can jot down a few things here. So what are some things that you guys notice about this position? Like, why is it fine for black to be down a piece for the pawns? Well, that's the first thing. Materially, what's the material? What's
First of all, he got that pin going on there. And that's a biggie right there, because the knight can't move. Because he's really shotgunning the king.
Yeah, bishop d4 pins knight c3.
Yeah, and then also the black rook can go down to h3 and slide over too. I mean, he's zeroing in on the king with his pieces.
Yeah, and now you see king e7. He's not even messing with the a pawn. He's just hey, you got 5 points of power in the corner, right? You got a rook in the, well, he's worth about, if he's in the corner, he's worth less than that. You want to make full use of the rook. It's kind of like, a knight on the 7th, 6th rank is like worth a rook maybe. It's about how it's used. So we just bring in those 5 points of power effectively to simplify. So rook controls h file, as you're talking about that. So you can, so all sorts of invasions, right? You said h3, h2 invasions.
And if the king was to move, then you bring that rook over there and you're really shotgunning the king after the bishop. You as you call it.
Yeah, there are those lines that we looked at when the rook comes in. You have rook h1 ideas. Okay, so there's the rook stuff going on. There's the bishop pin. So you're speaking about the rook and the bishop. Excellent. What else, what other pieces / pawns are you noticing for either side, really? When you're noticing you're talking about the vulnerability of the white king. What else, Naga?
You have your knight on d7.
Oh,
you have the knight on d7. He can move to c5, and then maybe even, I was going to say d3 fork, but I just saw the bishop.
No, that's actually a thing, because then we're going to tie that. Remember, we looked at the bishop d3, so there's some funky stuff there, and then we'll tie that to Lynn's idea of rook h1. So let's say white goes like rook g4, and you get it rook h1. So if you're already on e5, you might do that. And also from e5, you're looking at f3, g4, g3. c5, you're looking at d3 and b3. If the knight moves away, it gives you the b3 pawn. So all sorts of things, that knight launching forward. And again, the other rook's going to swing into like double up or maybe e8 later. Okay. So c5, e5 to maybe d3. What else? Pawn, how about, well, obviously the bishop on e4 is looking good. It's pinned, the knight's pinned, which allows it to sit there. Anything else? How about pawn structure?
Well, I thought maybe if, but that wouldn't be right. No.
I think we have better pawn structure, since both our pawn, like we have both our pawn islands are connected. Like we have 2 pawns, two connected pawns and 4 connected pawns. And we also have a target on g5, so we can possibly get a connected pass pawn on g and f. And we also have a pass pawn on the d file.
Right. So we have all these like really nice advantages. So if we just forget about material, which is one imbalance, we say, oh, we really like our position with black. And the thing is, when you look at material, we actually have 3 pawns for a piece. So by pure count, again, like I said, 5 rooks for a rook. Again, that's all rough, right? But if we purely count them up, we have 5 now, right? 3, 4, 5, 6 against 3. And those are weakling pawns kind of on the B file. They don't really help white much. They were okay, but they don't help much. You have target here. Malcolm, where else did you say? We have strong pawns. Did you mention we have these, like a target here? Anything else you said about weakness?
Yeah, I didn't mention those double pawns, but yeah, they're targets as well. That we have 4, like 2 pawn islands are strong, the 4 connected pass pawns and the 2 connected pawns. And
oh yeah, well, if we pick those off, we've got 4 connected pass pawns. So that would be amazing. You never know. After knight c5, things could happen, but they're just tied down. We got great pawn structure. They've got, and that g5 pawn is definitely more attackable. Well, if we really wanted to, we could have almost brought the bishop. They have bishop b3, but we might be able to pick off that pawn in some cases, or like knight e5. You also have ideas like c5, kick the knight out. That actually gives you knight f3, and then you can take the rook, or if the rook moves, you get the pawn. Then you have two connected pass pawns over here. So yeah, tremendous, like overwhelming advantages for black in terms of placement. And again, the king safe. You can go king f8 if you want, but this white king is just in the crosshairs. You can't really get away from all those pieces. Maybe white can hope for trades, but even the trades, it's not like that piece is just because of the pawns for black. The piece is not going to mean that much. Those pawns also create a fortress, right? So yeah, you have all those things, the bishop before pin, rook controls the h file, then you say h3. Later on, you might get any of these invasions depending on where white's pieces are. The safe one now is h2. We have the white king being vulnerable, knight d7 is mobile, c5, e5 hops to d3 and f3, and just clearly across the board better pawn structure, and 3 pawns for a piece, so equal material approximately. Okay, so let's go back to the game. All right. Let's just clear that. Okay, so we've got, yeah, that was just a sample line. But that's the bishop and then knight. But then there's the immediate knight attack, because that's the other move you mentioned, Lynn. There's the bishop move and the knight move, right? Okay. So after knight e2, let's see what's going on here. Actually, now this one, computer's liking black, giving black the edge. So again, we're seeing the knight takes f3 check line, right? So remember, we've already got the d pawn. Now we're going to get those 2 pawns. That's the 3. Again, that's the thing about the trapped bishop. So if you want to come after the bishop, you've got to compromise something. And again, that's Ding's exploitation of overextension again, right? Weak pawns. So it's like, yeah, I'm kind of like inside your weak pawns, right? I'm behind the scenes, and that could cause me trouble. But as you're getting busy taking my bishop, I'm busy taking your pawns. And weak pawns become no pawns, which becomes, well, then you just have weak squares to harvest basically for black. So there's the knight e2 line. And then, wow, it really likes that. Yeah, you pretty much got to go bishop f2. This is a natural move, though. Knight takes, bishop takes. That's, again, when you start evaluating these positions, you're only seeing some nuances. It's almost the same. It's given what? Knight here, almost the same. You can still do the check if you want. So we have nearly this. The evaluation is not that different, right? Same, almost the same factors. And there you go, John. We could go ahead immediately with knight c5 or bishop c5. We already have the d3 invasion point. Look at that. I like castles. Yeah, I like that move. Full mobilization. I mean, just forget about material. Just look at the piece placement. And again, we have equal material, right? 3 pawns piece, but just piece placement. Fantastic piece placement. Fantastic pawn structure. So not only do you have more pawns, you have better pawn structure. So you can see that's the evaluation, right? Does that make sense as to why this is good for black to play this way?
Yes.
Again, to the untrained eye, for almost all of us, myself included, it's like, wait, why am I giving up the bishop? But you have to realize, once you start looking at 96, you have to realize how strong it is. And this is the kind of thing that may just never kind of enter the purview of your calculations. It's just something you gotta open your mind to, that you can allow your bishop to be trapped. Because again, the typical motif is, oh, I know how this is going to get trapped. I know f3, e4 is a thing, right? Therefore, I'm going to scram. But I mean, it's interesting because he probably wouldn't have gone to c2 otherwise. Maybe he had looked at Gukesh's games. Maybe this is a thing Gukesh does. I don't know. And maybe he worked with his team to prepare to trap his bishop. That would have been interesting. But clearly when he goes there, I mean, it's obvious. It's pretty obvious he's not going to win the pawn. Well, this has been played before, actually. It's a line, yeah. So maybe they were looking. Oh, actually, Eric Geisy, fellow Indian chess player, has done it. So maybe he spoke with him, and he thought, oh, I played Kramnik, and I drew him, and I could have done something better, So he probably had it. Oh, in that game, he actually took on b3. Oh, that's interesting. But that see, he's going for more though. Yeah, I don't think that's that inspiring. Oh, interestingly, yeah, he's attacking this. He's getting the pawn back. Yeah, so that's not really so inspiring for me. Okay, now he's not losing the A pawn, but it's okay. Ended up being a draw. So he basically is trying to find an improvement over Aragai's game. Aragais is super good too. What did you say, 2,700 player as well? But yeah, so he voluntarily walks in there and he voluntarily lets it get trapped. Again, only inaccuracy there is this move. Bishop b7 is better. And don't take. But see, now you see the difference in terms of variations. Why do you think it is that we shouldn't give up the pawn for those two? No, not even two. Just take. Remember the other lines? What happened here in the other lines that you can't do anymore after this?
There's gonna be no pass pawn on a D file because all the lines we looked at, we had the D file, the D pawn had no opposing pawn against it.
They're evaporating now. You don't have a D pawn to have a pass pawn that could become a pass pawn. He's gone. And also, how about White's pawns? What happened to White? What happened with White's pawns in this line?
Oh yeah, they like in the line of if you took the E pawn, like the line, talk about the line D captures on E4.
Yeah. The improvement here where we see this happening, and we'll look at the game. But in the game, by trading,
Like
yes, you're going to get the D pawn probably. But what's the problem there? Oh, interestingly, if he goes bishop back to guard, boom, you have that move. That's kind of cool because then the knight comes in, covers d3. So that's why he kind of has to give you that pawn. At any rate, if you don't take it, what was the benefit of playing knight e6 with the pawns as they are here? See, because White's center is feeble. It's still feeble. He's pushing, but he has the responsibility to guard it. So he's allowing it to collapse in order to get the bishop. But as we saw, it's not quite enough. So why is this better for black to have the pawns like this after 96? What's the benefit there? Only thing that really allowed him to hang in the game, to stay in the game, What was that?
Was it the knight capturing f3? Check.
Right. And then when you take f3, they fall like dominoes. Now there's no more, again, like Malcolm's, there's no more d pawn to become a pass pawn. There's no more f pawn to attack and therefore remove the e pawn. So he doesn't get anything, right? He doesn't really get anything out of it. I don't even know if he's going to get this pawn. The thing about getting that pawn is because he had the D pawn. So he loses the D pawn. He trades those off. He loses the ability to have a pass pawn, to take the E pawn, and to take the F pawn. So it's just a way worse. No, the only thing that he has now is to get the B pawn. But that's a much smaller prize. In the other one, you destroy the center. In this line, all you're getting is the D pawn. Think about it. You should always take the stronger pawn first if you can. You don't really care that much about the b3 pawn. That's like you got to be disappointed if that's what you end up with, which is what he ends up with. So it takes, but again, that's what I'm saying. Ding had a pretty good chance. Slight inaccuracy, because again, that line combined with 96, that would have been very good for black. This is the line that allows black to do okay, to be in the game, have some interesting chances, but black is in the game. Now look at the evaluation shift. I guess you call it 60 cents upon loss, right? But it's a big inaccuracy. Look at the other one. Well, same with this one. It says minus 0.3 to plus 0.7. So he really started, so he really started making some mistakes, right? At that point. So yeah, that would be.
What move was that?
What's that?
What was the move?
So first he should have done this instead of rook h5, but most importantly, he should have just gone straight away 96, and then he'll get the kind of lines we looked at where we have compensation. But as it happened after the trade, 96, we just have a worse version of it. And that's where the subtlety is very important. And that's where he's going. The thing I'm getting at here is he's playing risky and kind of doing this computer line. And he almost got there because he's Ding, he's a super grandmaster. But if you're going to go for that line, you better make sure the whole thing works, because you're teetering on the edge with the move like bishop c2. Does that make sense? That's kind of the lesson, I think. And as you see, I mean, he's just, you see it just fades. And then, of course, Gukesh is an amazing tactician, and he doesn't miss his chance to convert. See, look at how it increases. So now it's plus 1.1. Apparently that was, we'll just look at the line. Why not? Says that move again. Still has that move. It's plus 1 still. Now he goes here. So you're going to see the advantage just kind of just increasing for Gukesh. See, that's all he's got now. He's got nothing better than this move, really. And see, he would have had a pawn on d5 and there wouldn't have been a pawn on e4. Because now, wait, we still actually have 3 for 5. What was it? No, but in some of those lines we have 3 for 6. Or no, again, it would have been that you'd have the pawn on d5, and then this pawn would have been a b3 pawn, which we don't care about the b3 pawn. We do care about that. Now, if you could win that pawn back on e4, you might get some kind of similar evaluation. Kind of liked our bishop checking though. Well, the rook did have to defend it. I don't know. I mean, it's not terrible, but you can see the nuances there. I mean, look, you've still got 95. It's not over. Again, it's saying plus 1 point something, but you see it said what, 1.1, 1.4, 1.7. It's the kind of thing where the burden is on Ding to prove that he can be back in the game, you know, stay in the game. But again, you're not playing like a computer, and you're getting into, you know, your time is dwindling. 18 minutes against 54 minutes. You're feeling the pressure, positional pressure, but you need to justify this, and you have time pressure, and ultimately you play more inaccurately, increasing your inaccuracy, and Gukesh plays really well. And as you see, his advantage is just going to become decisive soon enough. It's still in the game though, a little bit. Pins it. Apparently that was bad, but seems reasonable. But he's just going to just deal with it. Bishop g2, a6, and keep in mind he never let king e2. No, could not entertain the idea of knight f3 any longer. So that was a good move. Get off the file with the king. There's nothing much to do. I guess rook, king e7 to swing around with the rook, maybe. Just patient play by both. Let's see where this goes. I think it moved 40, they gained time. They're moved 33, so they probably don't mind having that. Oh, I think Dukesh is the one that doesn't want it to go to the 40th move, though. Wants to try and catch him now because his opponent has much less time than him. So Ding really needs the time control to gain an extra half an hour, an hour. I think it's an hour. Bishop invasion, but that's the move. Look at that. So where does it really go down? Okay, now we're at +2 for white. Now it's realizing, oh, it's +3. And now it's as if now it's worth an extra piece. So we have 5 for 2. Look, he actually has finally, no, sorry, it's still 2 pawns. Yeah, it's not 6. Still 2 pawns. That's it. No, what am I? No, it is 3 pawns. I thought no, because no. Now it's 5 for 2. So he does have 3 extra pawns, but at that point, it's yeah. At that point, it's just getting worse and worse because you're seeing the bishops activate. So it doesn't matter anymore how many pawns he has. It's all about that positioning. Because again, even in the previous positions we saw, if it had been like 5 for 3, but the positioning was still there, 2 pawns for the piece, that would have been fine. Now it's 3 pawns for a piece, but just terrible positioning. I mean, the rooks are very awkward, and you see really what's going on tactically is the dependence of the bishop on the rook on d7, and you're just seeing things fall apart. You're seeing the power of the bishop here, and he's about to resign. He actually, I think he made the move, I think, then lost on time. So I'm not sure if that's actually an official move, right? I don't think it's because if he makes the move and loses on time, it's not really. Yeah, I don't think it's on the board. It was recorded from the DGT electronic board. But yeah, he lost on time, 0 seconds. 3 moves from time control. So yeah, best move it gives though. I mean, look at the crisis here. Best move it gives is take, king takes, nothing to do. Because you go here, the bishop just takes with check, removing the defender of the bishop, and white is up a rook. 3 pawns again, but it's a whole rook. It's a winning position. So it's mate in 15, right? So again, now it's in both cases, it's about piece activity and pawn placement, but the pawns don't do anything too strong. And again, if you had that full center, you wouldn't have to worry about it. So yeah, it's in a way kind of a cryptic, tricky game, but when you break it down, there are a lot of tricky lines with the ways in which the bishop gets kind of indirectly defended. Again, via counterattack. It's all about counterattack, not direct defense, only for a moment. But then obviously you have to know the knight's going to be removed. But if you're going to go in for it, you better make sure you know it, that it's going to work. Otherwise, you need to just go, you need to retreat your bishop and have a -0.1, right? Or else the computer will tell you, hey, I mean, If you don't retreat, you go bishop b7, it's minus 0.3. It likes it a tiny bit more for black to allow them to be trapped, but you better play perfectly. And it likes black. Yeah, minus 0.2, minus 0.7, whatever it is, based on what white does. You got to play it perfectly, though. That's the thing. And so as a human, especially as a non-super GM, you probably won't get away with it. But you have to sense like when it's that kind of computer line and when it isn't. But the point is, yeah, he's in over his head. He's in over his head at this point. Even a super jam didn't do it perfectly. But I think it is interesting that he came pretty close to playing perfectly. But it was really just, if he had simply done that move, where was it? This move maybe, but yeah, that didn't make much sense, I think, instead of the bishop. But if he had just found this, he would have been fine. I think so. It would have been relative, because he would have definitely found the knight takes f3. He did knight takes b3 because that's all he had, but he would have obviously taken f3 and taken those 2 pawns instead of the b pawn. So you guys have any questions about the game?
No.
What do you guys think of it? What's your takeaway?
Trap bishop. And how to get
Move
him out.
faster.
What's that?
Move faster.
Yeah, but don't get your bishop trapped in a bad way, because that'll lead to time pressure and positional pressure, and then you're gonna lose on time. Yeah, or mate in 15. And yeah, trapped bishop. When is it trapped? When can you get away with it? But that's relatable, you know, transferable to a lot of concepts in terms of this is something that we know we shouldn't let happen. Like, it's kind of a given. Don't get your bishop trapped, except for the rare occurrence when you can. Now, as for double pawns, you don't double your pawns, but there are many exceptions to that. I don't know. Maybe that's more of like a 60% kind of thing where you shouldn't double them. But really, there are a lot of cases where it's fine to double your pawns. You just have to know that you're getting that, you know, you're opening up lines, you're controlling different squares. But of course, fundamentally, they are more rigid, just by nature, because you can't move the back pawn anymore. They are more rigid, make it harder to create passed pawns. There are weaknesses created. So that's part of it too. But it's a matter of your judgment. Now, this is sort of, it's incredibly difficult tactics, but it's also being able to do that kind of foggy evaluation. You know, you're piercing the fog of war, and you're sensing like, where would that be? Let's see if this is one of them. I think there was this line. There were better lines. Where would it be? Yeah, like sensing this line. And you kind of have to see, you don't have to see everything, but you know you could get something like this. And sensing like, okay, if I have good visualization, I can see this, I can't complain, right? I really can't complain having black's position, because you see a lot of black's pieces white's pieces are tied up. The pawns are bad. You're up. This was 3, right? 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, this was a 3-pawn scenario. And these pawns don't count for as much when they just don't. This is a bad example of double pawns, right? As it turned out. Well, Ding had to prove that. He didn't quite get there. He came maybe 90% of the way there. Didn't quite cut it. And then it took Gukesh's perfect play. Now, if Ding were playing at 2600, maybe he would have at least held. But against you know, one of the top guys in the world, he didn't let him get away with it. So yeah. All right, we'll stop it there. Nice job, guys. Yeah, that's cool. I really wanted to focus on that one moment, but the context, actually, you know, from nearly the beginning, you got G6, bishop F5, that foreshadowing, and then the queen trade stuff. You attack the queen goes to B3, creating this scenario of the double pawns, and then you come into that square. So it's really all about what happened there and the follow through. So you could see the kind of, yeah, in this post-mortem, you know, you can kind of look at the whole anatomy of the position.